Welcome. So what we're going to talk about today are the ABCs of emotions. So the order of learning today is first we're going to review the ABCs of behavior, then we're going to discuss the cognitive triangle. And with those, we're going to then move to emotions. First, a primary emotion, then a secondary emotion, and then an example of how your thinking can affect the emotions that you have. So here we go. Okay, so you may remember this. These are the ABCs of behaviorism. Something happens, it affects your behavior, then there's a consequence of it. In the past, you've attended some of my classes and some lessons, and it became something interesting to you. Then this video became available, so you watch it, and then hopefully there are some consequences. And we'll go on from there. Cognitive triangle, your thoughts, feelings, and behavior all influence each other. Perhaps some of your past behaviors in the courses are now affecting how you think about things and how you feel about things, and vice versa. And so here we go, off to emotions. So what we know is right now it is in the early afternoon, and it is about the time that my body wants to take a nap. And in a certain time, there are conditions and vulnerabilities. My urge to take a nap makes me more vulnerable to being irritable and less emotionally patient and generally more emotionally vulnerable. Also, it is cold outside today and I don't really like that very much. Get a little bit of the seasonal affective disorder and worked pretty hard this morning physically, and so my body is a little vulnerable. So this is the background information. And now I'm going to make a loud noise. This is a trigger antecedent, and it has an automatic behavioral consequence. So that makes this a primary emotion. What happens is my sympathetic nervous system gets activated, the blood's moving from my body to my extremities, my hands start to sweat a little bit, I can feel a jitteriness in my feet, my eyes get wide, I'm like, what was that noise? What is happening? The next thing that happens is there is a feedback, which then if I'm a runner, I will run. If I'm a fighter, I might get ready to fight. And this then reinforces the sweatiness in my hands and the agitation that I feel, my desire to run. This is the emotion feedback loop. And what you see is emotions are greedy. Once it gets started, it wants to persist. And once you're kind of cued into an issue, until it's resolved, you'll continue to feel that issue. So as part of this, your cortisol levels have gone up, you feel adrenaline, and we will now name this emotion fear. Okay, so the emotion happens before you can identify that you have it. The next thing after that is, suppose not much happens for a while, I calm down and use my deep breathing skills. It generally takes about 15 minutes for adrenaline to get out of your system. And it also, for a certain amount of time, your amygdala will be hyper vigilant, looking for dangerous things in your environment, which will actually make it more likely that you will feel fear again in the near future because your amygdala is primed for it. Now, one of the things that we know is by clapping loud like that and it makes a noise, if I continue to do it over and over again, you will get desensitized to it. And that is a consequence to the fact that the loud noise has not been associated with danger. Now, on the other hand, if I make that loud slap and then you get doused with water or, something falls over at your house and breaks, well, you won't get desensitized to it. It'll stay. Now, that creates a series of ongoing conditions and vulnerabilities. Now, you know that little children, when one of them slaps the other one or makes a loud noise, they get conditioned and they will start cycles of bickering. If you know, well, we'll come back to that in a moment, but notice what can happen. The consequences and after effect can be a subsequent trigger. Now, you can imagine a scenario where, because you know that I'm doing this on purpose, you don't react to it. But you can also imagine a scenario where, oh, there's a loud noise, I'm leaving this room, I'm not staying here anymore. and the feedback, the ABCs, continue. Now, let's take another version of this. Okay, same conditions of vulnerabilities, this just occurred. All right, so here's your trigger. Okay, something different happened this time. The arrow moves to a different location. Now, this time, instead of you automatically having the hypervigilance, the eyes, the movement to your hands, the sympathetic nervous system, you think, Dan's a jerk. Why is he clapping his hands and trying to scare me? How dare he try to scare me? This will also have a similar response to your nervous system. This time, instead of your hands getting sweaty and a desire to run, your hands ball up, your forehead furrows, and you just want to stare at daggers. And you posture like, how dare you do this to me, right? You might even say that for that matter. And this feedback loop is now generating something slightly different. Because of the interpretation that you experienced, how dare he do this to me? He's trying to scare me. Instead of feeling fear, you are now feeling anger. Anger, in a lot of ways, is similar to fear as far as the after effects, but it can also have this kind of self-righteous effect on how you feel about things. Well, this happened and I shouldn't have had to deal with this, and you can imagine so many scenarios of this happening with, like, say, road rage. Okay. So one of the things that can happen is anger generally makes people feel more powerful. Therefore, anger is very easily reinforced because it affects the people around us. So, this case, it may actually make you more likely to be angry in the future. And also, anger is very stressful in your body, which might make it more likely that you become sick. Okay. Now, again, this can become another cycle and can result in more antecedents and triggers. Okay, let's do something a little bit different this time. Same conditions of vulnerabilities. You were afraid, you were angry. Moving forward. There's the trigger. This time I think Dan is using the noise as a learning opportunity. And he's using it because it's a very clear, clean opportunity, and it will give me an opportunity to learn something that's important. Okay. This time, instead of having your sympathetic nervous system, you're thinking, I actually really appreciate this example. It's really helpful. And you actually feel yourself kind of calm, and you become a little bit more interested. And you can, at this point, choose what you want to do. You become more focused. Now you notice this time that the feedback loop is broken because it's not automatically reinforcing itself, at least as far as anger and fear goes. If you continue to be interested, it would become a feedback loop as far as interest. Okay, so we might call this emotion interest, you might call it appreciation, and in the moment you might feel happy. The consequences of this is that it's likely that you're going to want to continue to watch more videos and learn new things because you may be finding this is helpful for you. This then affects your conditions and vulnerabilities, and in fact, it's likely that it will condition you to want to learn more about yourself and your emotions and to be interested in how your emotions come about. And it may actually decrease your vulnerabilities because you're feeling calm and relaxed. So this time, there's not going to be another arrow that goes to the trigger because you're like, okay, I know what's happening with my emotions and we're going to move on. So that being said, I encourage you to watch the cycles of your emotions and notice how quickly they go. You'll notice that in a moment, you might have a thought, how dare he do this to me, to the clenching of the fist, to being stop it, the word stop it, to be your cognitive triangle, just happening very quickly, to a cycle where maybe you were scared and it took 15 or 20 minutes to calm down. Or maybe you feel appreciative of this lesson. And really over the next day or two, you might sit and think about it. And it might change your day and the way you go about life. In fact, it might even create a sense of awe about the amazingness that our bodies gives us, these superpowers that completely change our reality moment to moment. So we'll come back to emotions, and we're going to talk about grieving next time.